So the Shape Builder, I think, is one of the most time-saving tools I've come across in Illustrator CC. And it really is fantastic. If you're creating logos and you want to combine or subtract elements one from the other, it's an invaluable tool. So I'll head over to a new artboard just to show you very quickly how this works. So we're going to create a few objects, ensuring that they overlap. We'll even create some type and outline that type. And to illustrate how this works, if I select all those objects and use the shortcut for the Shape Builder tool, which is Shift M, you now have the ability, if you click and drag by default, to combine these shapes into a single object, or if you hold the Alt modifier key, you can click and drag to subtract. So by adding and subtracting, you can imagine the possibilities. You're able to create completely new compound shapes, and just remember to group the end result if it has a cutout, as I've done here. So as a logo designer, I'm sure your brain is already racing away with the possibilities when you're creating custom type or logos. So an effect I like to create sometimes is a cutout on type. I think it's quite a nice way to create a modern symbol. So first of all, taking this piece of type, we have to outline it. If I were to open the Shape Builder tool now, I just get this stop sign appear. So with the A outlined, and the shortcut for that is Control-Shift-O, I want to Alt drag to duplicate it. And the idea is I'm going to cut out a little portion of the A to create a nice effect. And as you hover over, you can see that's going to give me a nice crisp edge. Select both objects, open the Shape Builder tool, Shift M, and if I hold the Alt modifier to subtract, as I drag, you can see it's subtracting one shape from the other, and that gives me the perfect angle that I'm looking for effortlessly. I quite like the consistency. If I'd subtract the same width here as we have for this part of the A, but I'm just going to get rid of this little piece sticking out of the bottom, deselect, and then if I select here, it keeps these grouped as objects. So if I select the A I had duplicated and delete everything that remains of that, you can zoom out, and that's quite a nice little cutout shape for the A. So you can imagine the possibilities. If that's something you like to do with type, to cut out portions to create something that's a little more modern or edgy, that's one way you could use the Shape Builder tool. Another way you can use it, if I come down here to something I created earlier, I really like this symbol for the Carrera Aesthetics monogram. It's just a simple C with an A that has no crossbar. And to create that using perhaps the Pathfinder could be quite tricky. So this is somewhere the Shape Builder is really useful, and I'll walk you through this step by step. So here we start with our two characters, the C and the A, and I've already removed a crossbar here. To do that, you could drag the A down, bring it to a position where you've got a nice overlap, and then again use the Shape Builder just to subtract the crossbar. And once you have that, you'll notice if we just wanted to pop them together, perhaps use the Pathfinder to combine the two shapes, it's not very attractive. We've actually got a nasty little overlap here where part of the C, even if I bring it so it's touching precisely, part of the C is sticking into the A. You've got a lip at the bottom, so it would be quite a bit of work to try to tidy this up just using the Pathfinder. But using the shape builder tool, I come across to the right, here's a version I've outlined, and you can see there's not really a very pleasant way to have this shape blend seamlessly one into the other, which is what I'm trying to achieve. If we look at the end result, I don't mind it changing from the rounded part of the C to a straight edge, but I really want it to kind of end where I tell it to end, and a little bit more of the C to come round at the bottom there, just to lead a little more seamlessly into VA. So this is how I did that. If we look at these outline shapes here, I've actually taken the C and reflected it, which you can do using the shortcut O. I'll click on an anchor point at the top of the arc of the C and then Alt drag to reflect it. So that's how I've ended up with this unusual shape here. Then I've simply outlined VA, and what doing that to the C means is using Shape Builder, we're able to now kind of carry on the exact curve of the C and create the kind of edges that we're looking for. So I'll select both objects, open up the Shape Builder tool, and what I'm going to do is subtract this little bit that's hanging out here and subtract this part of the C, and then we won't need any of this. So before we delete the reflected C that's on top, if we zoom in just to check everything is nice and seamless. So actually we want to, you can see it's jumped down here. The C we're going to use, the arc is just slightly unbalanced with a reflected C, and I'd like to use that edge. There we are. And that path to create something that runs a little more smoothly. So again, if we select those objects, open the Shape Builder tool and hold Alt to subtract, it lets us just remove that little piece there. It would have been really annoying. And if we zoom in even further, we've got another one here. So that's because that particular C for that font is not 100% symmetrical, so it wouldn't quite have lined up as we wanted it to. Let's zoom in up here just to check, and again not quite perfectly aligned, so we can deal with that at the end. Let's select and delete the C we reflected. I'll select and use Shape Builder again and just combine these shapes for the left now. And this is where I'd recommend just going in with a fine-tooth comb, and anything you come across like this where you've not had perfect alignment, well, I'm going to remove one of those anchor points, and if we check it's got, yeah, that's got a good point to align to. I'll just remove another one. And remove that last one, and now we've got a perfectly straight line to connect those 2 points. So you can see how useful it is to create the exact elements you're looking for when you're combining type for monograms. And there's the end result there when we fill it, and in the context of a logo, that's really quite powerful. So to show you one final way I would use a Shape Builder, if you wanted to create this kind of monogram, so this is the end result, and you've probably often seen this where you take two characters and you create this intertwining effect where it seems that one is overlapping the other, and then as it comes back around, it's heading underneath. So it creates the illusion that the two are really intertwined. Now, to do this using the Shape Builder tool is really easy. So position the two characters as you want them to appear, select them, Control-Shift-O to outline them. As mentioned before, Shape Builder won't work unless you've outlined the type. And then we want to create an external stroke to create this negative area we're going to cut out. So let's do that. Let's make it 5 point. Align the stroke to the outside. By clicking stroke, you get that option. And I'm going to color it in white so it's a little closer to the result I'm looking for. And let's increase that by a few points. Something like that, around 10 points. I think that's what we're looking for. So if you select both objects and you want to go to Object, Expand Appearance, and once you've done that, you see that these strokes are now expanded into solid shapes. This allows you to use the Shape Builder tool to interact with them. So to make that 100% clear, the Shape Builder can't edit strokes, but once you expand appearance and you turn a stroke into a solid shape, the Shape Builder can interact with it. So let's again use the shortcut Shift M to open up the Shape Builder tool. And you need to just keep a mental track of what you're doing here. So we want to thread the top of the S over the top of the P. So holding the Alt key, we want to subtract not just the negative space surrounding the S and the P, but we're actually going to intersect this part of a P that we want to cut out here. And I'll deselect there so that I've always got the option to undo. And the same for this part here. Just select while holding the Alt key, and it's going to subtract all of this. Now here, if we look again at the reference, we want this to stand out on top. So again, it's going to be the P it cuts away at. So we hold Alt and we're removing that there. Now, as the S curves and it overlaps the P again, this time we want the P to stand out in front. So holding Alt, this time instead of clicking here, we're going to click and remove this portion of the S and follow that down, and the same on the left hand side and follow that down. This negative space we can remove, and these parts we can remove. To tidy it up. Now we want to add a few of the shapes just to create one seamless object. So I'm going to click, no modifier keys held this time, and drag up to make sure the stem of the P is solid. I'm going to just add that little portion there, add these portions, and I'll hold Alt again to remove that portion. And if we deselect and come away, you can see we've done that quite quickly. And once you're familiar with the tool, you'll be able to work really fast. You have to go in with a fine-tooth comb when you're doing your final versions, but even for the sake of testing how an idea works, using the Shape Builder tool to create an intricate overlap like this is really easy. It's something you can eventually do in just a few minutes. So hopefully already you can see the many possibilities using the Shape Builder tool opens up. And if you're working with type, with icons, it's really an invaluable tool.